There's something nobody tells you about getting older. It's not that your body starts creaking or that you suddenly care about lawn maintenance. It's that you start seeing patterns everywhere. Patterns in how people think, how they make decisions, how they sabotage themselves, and how they find their way back. I've been thinking a lot lately about the things I wish someone had sat me down and explained when I was younger. Not the typical graduation speech stuff about following your dreams, but the real, messy, uncomfortable truths about how life actually works. See, here's what I've noticed. Most people spend their 20s trying to figure out who they're supposed to be, their 30s panicking about who they've become, and their 40s finally accepting who they actually are. But what if we could skip some of that confusion? Let me start with something that completely changed how I see relationships. Every person you attract into your life is a mirror. I know that sounds like something you'd read on a coffee shop wall, but stick with me here. The way people treat you isn't random. It's directly connected to how you treat yourself. Think about it. If you constantly put yourself down, dismiss your own needs, or accept treatment that deep down you know isn't right, you're basically sending out a signal. You're telling the world, this is how much I'm worth. And the world listens. I learned this the hard way through a string of relationships where I kept wondering why I always ended up with people who didn't value me. The answer was staring me in the mirror every morning. I didn't value me either. This connects to something else that took me years to understand. Respect isn't something you can demand or expect. It's something you earn, starting with yourself. You can't build genuine self-respect by telling yourself you're amazing while your actions suggest otherwise. Self-respect comes from doing things that are actually worth respecting. It's like building credit. Every time you follow through on a promise you made to yourself, every time you choose the harder but better path, every time you stand up for your values even when it's inconvenient, you make a deposit. And just like with money, these deposits compound over time. Which brings me to one of the most important concepts I wish I'd grasped earlier. The things that matter most in life work on compound interest. Health, relationships, skills, financial stability, even confidence. They all build slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, but then suddenly you look up and realize you've created something significant. The problem is that when you're young, everything feels urgent. You want results now. You want to be successful now, wealthy now, in the perfect relationship now. But compound growth doesn't work that way. It requires patience and consistency. Two things our instant gratification culture doesn't exactly promote. Here's what nobody tells you about those exciting, immediately gratifying experiences. They follow a completely different pattern. The first time you try something new and exciting, it's incredible. The second time is almost as good, but then there's this steady decline. Each subsequent experience gives you less satisfaction than the last. This applies to so many things. Social media likes, impulse purchases, even certain types of relationships. They give you a quick hit of excitement, but they're not sustainable sources of fulfillment. The real challenge is learning to distinguish between what feels good right now and what actually makes your life better over time. I think this is why so many people struggle with focus. We live in a world of infinite options and constant stimulation. Everything seems important and exciting, but here's a counterintuitive truth I've learned. If you're not regularly turning down things that genuinely excite you, you're probably not focused enough on what truly matters. This idea of saying no connects to something deeper about identity. Most people think identity is about discovering who you are, like there's some predetermined self waiting to be uncovered. But identity is actually about choosing who you become. And that choice happens through what you say yes to and what you say no to. Every time you say no to something, you're defining yourself. You're drawing boundaries. You're choosing one path over another. If you never say no, if you try to keep all your options open, you end up without any real identity at all. You become a reflection of whatever's happening around you instead of a person with clear values and direction. This is why taking responsibility for your life is so powerful. Not because it feels good, although sometimes it does, but because it gives you back your power. When you blame other people for your problems, you're essentially saying they have control over your happiness. You're making yourself a victim of their choices. But when you take responsibility, even for things that aren't entirely your fault, you regain the ability to do something about your situation. It might not feel fair, but it's effective. The person who caused your problem might not fix it, but you can. I used to think this sounded harsh, like I was letting people off the hook for bad behavior. But I realize now it's the opposite. Taking responsibility isn't about excusing others. It's about refusing to let their actions define your life. This mindset shift affects everything: your career, your relationships, your health, your personal growth. Instead of waiting for the perfect circumstances or the right opportunity or someone else to solve your problems, you start looking for what you can control and influence. And here's something interesting that happens when you start taking more responsibility. You become less defensive. When someone criticizes you or points out a mistake, instead of immediately getting upset or making excuses, you can actually listen. You can consider whether there's something useful in what they're saying. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or accepting abuse. It means becoming secure enough in yourself that feedback doesn't feel like an attack on your worth as a person. It's just information you can choose to use or ignore. Speaking of security, let me share something that changed how I think about confidence. Most people believe confidence comes from expecting to succeed. But real confidence actually comes from being okay with failure. It comes from knowing that if things don't work out, you'll figure out a way to handle it. The person who needs everything to go perfectly is actually quite fragile. They avoid taking risks because they can't handle the possibility of failure. But the person who's comfortable with failure can take much bigger risks because they know failure isn't the end of the world. This connects to something else I wish I'd understood earlier: the difference between motivation and momentum. Most people wait to feel motivated before they take action. But motivation is actually the result of action, not the cause of it. When you're stuck or procrastinating, the answer isn't to wait until you feel like doing something. It's to take the smallest possible action toward your goal and let momentum carry you forward. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. The same principle applies to love and relationships. People think you fall in love first and then commit. But lasting love actually works the opposite way. You choose to commit to someone, and then through that commitment, through working through problems together and building a life together, real love develops. This might sound unromantic, but I think it's actually more romantic than the fairy tale version. It means love is a choice you make every day, not just a feeling that happens to you. It means you have more control over your relationships than you might think. And that brings me to something crucial about choosing a partner. You're not just choosing someone to have fun with or someone who makes you feel good in the moment. You're choosing your future business partner, your crisis manager, your biggest supporter, and sometimes your toughest critic. The person you're with will influence almost every major decision in your life. Where you live, how you spend your money, how you raise your kids if you have them, how you handle stress, how you grow as a person. So while attraction and compatibility are important, they're just the starting point. Trust is what actually makes relationships work. Every good relationship is built on accumulated trust over time. Every failed relationship fails because trust was broken and never properly repaired. This is why honesty and integrity aren't just nice moral qualities. They're practical necessities for a good life. Here's something else I've noticed about relationships. If you keep having the same problem with different people, the problem isn't them. It's you. This can be hard to accept, but it's also hopeful. If you're the common factor, that means you have the power to change the pattern. Now, let me talk about something that applies to every area of life. There's no such thing as a life without problems. The goal isn't to eliminate problems. It's to upgrade to better problems. A successful person still has problems. They just have more interesting problems than an unsuccessful person. Warren Buffett has money problems. They're just different money problems than someone who's broke. The key is making sure your problems are moving in the right direction. Are they getting more interesting, more meaningful, more aligned with your values? Or are you stuck dealing with the same basic problems year after year? Growth always involves loss. To become someone new, you have to let go of who you were. Your old beliefs, your old habits, sometimes even your old relationships. This is why change can be so uncomfortable even when it's positive. You're not just gaining something, you're also grieving something. I think this is why so many people resist change even when they're unhappy with their current situation. Change requires you to face uncertainty and loss. It's easier to stay miserable in a familiar way than to risk being miserable in an unfamiliar way. But here's what I've learned about discomfort. It's not something to be avoided. It's something to be chosen. The question isn't whether you'll face discomfort. The question is whether you'll choose discomfort that leads somewhere or discomfort that keeps you stuck. The discomfort of discipline weighs ounces. The discomfort of regret weighs tons. Choose your discomfort wisely. This is why I've become suspicious of anything that promises to make life easy or comfortable. Nothing meaningful in life is easy, and nothing easy in life is meaningful. We're designed to find satisfaction through struggle and achievement, not through having everything handed to us. The irony is that we think we want everything to be effortless, but when things come too easily, we don't value them. The things we treasure most are the things we had to work for, the relationships we fought to build, the skills we struggled to develop, the goals we pushed through obstacles to achieve. So instead of looking for ways to avoid difficulty, start looking for difficulties worth embracing. Find challenges that align with your values and goals, because you're going to face challenges anyway. You might as well face ones that make you stronger and move you toward the life you actually want. Speaking of the life you want, here's something that might surprise you. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. So much of our stress comes from this constant need to demonstrate our worth, to show that we're successful or smart or attractive or whatever. But the people who are truly confident don't feel this need. They're comfortable with who they are, which means they're comfortable with who they're not. They don't have to be everything to everyone. They can just be themselves. This doesn't mean being complacent or not striving for improvement. It means you can work toward goals because they're meaningful to you, not because you're trying to prove something to the world. And here's something liberating to remember. Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think about yourself. That embarrassing thing you did, most people have already forgotten it. That insecurity you're worried about, chances are nobody else has even noticed it. This might sound depressing, but it's actually freeing. It means you're being judged far less than you think. It means you have more freedom to take risks and be authentic than you realize. Now, let me share something that applies whether you're 20 or 60 or 80. It's never too late to change. I know this sounds like a platitude, but I mean it literally. You have more time left to master something new than most professionals in that field have been practicing. I think about this whenever I hear someone say they're too old to start something. Even if you're 50 and want to learn piano, you could potentially have 30 or 40 years to practice. That's longer than most professional pianists have been playing. The only real limitation is how long you're willing to make excuses instead of taking action. Every day you wait is a day less you have to develop whatever skill or pursue whatever goal matters to you. This connects to something I've observed about extraordinary results. They don't come from extraordinary actions. They come from ordinary actions repeated over an extraordinary amount of time. Every overnight success is actually the result of years of work that nobody saw. The person who seems to have natural talent usually just started earlier and practiced more consistently than everyone else. The business that suddenly explodes was built on years of small improvements and steady growth. This is why consistency beats intensity. Working out a little bit every day is far more effective than working out intensely once a week. Writing for 30 minutes daily will produce more results than writing for 8 hours once a month. The compound effect is real, but it requires patience and faith. You have to trust that small actions repeated over time will eventually create significant results, even when you can't see progress in the moment. And here's the final thing I want to leave you with. Life advice is like clothing. Some of it will fit you perfectly and some of it won't. Take what's useful and leave the rest. Don't try to force yourself into someone else's blueprint for success or happiness. The goal isn't to become someone else. It's to become the best version of yourself. And that version is probably different from what you imagine and definitely different from what anyone else expects. Your path will be unique to you, but the principles remain the same. Take responsibility for your life. Build relationships based on trust and mutual respect. Think long-term. Embrace discomfort that leads to growth. Be willing to change when change is needed. Most importantly, start where you are with what you have. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need perfect circumstances. You just need to take the first step, and then the next one, and then the one after that. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Whatever you've been putting off, whatever you've been afraid to start, whatever you think you're too old or too young or too something to pursue, maybe it's time to reconsider. Because here's what I know for sure. The years are going to pass anyway. The question is whether you'll spend them becoming who you want to be or staying who you've always been. The choice is yours, and the time is now.